Everything on Earth is energy. Every cell, every atom. Essentially, we're all made of the same cosmic fabric. Nikola Tesla once said, "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." That's how it's all connected. A delicate thread weaving through the tapestry of the universe, infusing it with breathtaking beauty, allowing our world to fill with wonder. You can find it everywhere. In a tree, a smile, in the song of a bird, but even in stillness. That's what I call the art of being one.
My name is Christina Nellis. I'm 33 years old, a dog mom, married, and live here in Bonn. And I'm a passionate animal communicator. Initially, my professional path led me in a completely different direction. For about a decade, I worked as a business psychologist and systemic consultant for organizational development, focusing on communication skills and asking good questions. And I never thought that would also be a part of my animal communication focus. And after volunteering in animal communication for about 1.5 to 2 years, I eventually pursued it as a career path. I actually became interested in animal communication after the death of my dog Nala. I felt the urge to explore the topic: is she still here in some form? Is her consciousness preserved in any way? And then I came across the topic of animal communication. I wanted to try it out myself and was amazed that it worked. There is actually a lot of scientific research on animal communication, but there is even more research on the topic of consciousness. This is very useful because animal communication is nothing but telepathy, which means a mental communication from one consciousness to another, which in the case of animal communication is specialized in animals. And it is very helpful to scientifically engage with the topic of consciousness to better understand its background. There are some renowned researchers who have been working on this topic for decades. One of them is Dean Redden, who deals with extrasensory perception. He has conducted studies on this at Stanford and other elite universities and has also investigated telepathy for the US government. There is the researcher Larry Dossey, a physician who investigates the mental influence on healing processes and establishes very interesting and clear connections between our consciousness and the matter in which we exist. There is also Julie Beischel, who collaborates with mediums and investigates how consciousness can actually be proven through the medium's work, thus proving that it survives death. And there is another interesting researcher, Jeffrey Long, who explores near-death experiences and has conducted fascinating studies for 30 to 40 years that show the actual continuation of our consciousness and show many connections in near-death experiences.
Unseres Bewusstseins nachweisen und sehr viele Zusammenhänge in den Nahtoderlebnissen aufzeigen.
So if you ask if IIC has been proven by science, I have to tell you that academia is an ongoing dialogue, which contains many different opinions. So I can only speak to you from my personal professional point of view now, which means you will get my interpretation and version of what is going on in these discussions. I can say that some scientists have worked on this, and there are published and ongoing experiments with significant results. Some very clearly so, for example, by Deborah Erickson, and some long-term research projects that are still ongoing. However, there are some issues with repeatability and experimental setups because in animal communication or intuitive interspecies communication, the very phenomenon of intuition is challenging the dominant Western scientific framework as it is defined by Newton and Descartes, in which mind and body are separated and bodies interact according to laws with certain time-space constraints. If we want to know more about phenomena like IIC, we have to question and expand our ways of understanding reality and develop new multi-species research methods.
In short, animal communication can be described as non-verbal communication. That means instead of verbally engaging in conversation, I use my thoughts. You can imagine it like a monologue we sometimes have with ourselves, like me when I can't sleep at night. That means instead of engaging in a monologue with myself, I use my thoughts on the dialogue level and then talk to an animal. Most of the time in animal communication, I'm booked by clients for working with their pets. I also sometimes communicate with wild animals and zoo animals, and I'm always fascinated by the messages and great wisdom they have to share with us. Malaika, do you have a role here in the zoo and generally in this life?
For me, it is important to be with this bonobo group here at the Cologne Zoo and to bring in fresh ideas and new perspectives. And in that, I see a significant task for myself to provide impulses, to open up perspectives, and to mediate when necessary.
Did you actually choose to live in captivity?
I could have chosen the wilderness or a completely different form of life, but I didn't. I knew what I was getting into even before I was born. I wanted to experience the dynamics and interaction of a community within these conditions or this different form of life. And I find it beautiful to be so close to humans, because I believe that we, as well as humans, can give valuable impulses and they can learn a lot from us for their own coexistence. And not just because we are monkeys, but because a lot connects us in general.
How do you feel about the fact that humans biologically descend from apes?
Well, that's mainly human interest in human biology, because fundamentally we all share a lineage. But yes, our physical makeup may have many parallels, and I hope that it positively influences the closeness between human and animal species.
What do you think about the lifestyle and diet of humans?
I think that the human way of life is often characterized by rediscovering things or doing certain experiences despite or precisely because of something. This often involves limitations, and these limitations are a deliberate part of the experiences and often consider different meaning than one might initially assume. Regarding the human diet, I perceive a detachment in many areas. By that, I mean the connection or harmony with what is being eaten. However, I do not wish to judge this detachment, but see it in many cases as part of personal life experience.
Do you believe that we humans will eventually manage to be more in harmony with nature?
The spiritual part of humans is always in harmony with nature. The human life experience or mission is often associated with returning to one's own origin and finding belonging, which can manifest and be lived out in various ways. As for the rest, it's not for me to judge, as each life path, each life mission is individual, and that's okay.
What do you think about humans increasingly destroying nature and thereby diminishing the habitat for animals?
Nature fundamentally serves its inhabitants as well. Using or consuming things is not always bad or destructive, but I believe that good stewardship of what surrounds us is the key. Regarding the diminishing habitat, I see it in a similar way. Consideration and interaction with each other are of higher importance than the quantity of habitat.
Are you sometimes angry about how humans treat nature?
No, I'm not. I like to look at things from a broader context, and I believe that anger is rarely the right path. Bringing more anger into the world doesn't make the world better and only contributes to a negative cycle. I especially want to emphasize again
What do you personally like the most, and what tends to bother you?
I find it wonderful and enjoy it that people can observe our interaction in the group and take impulses from it. Many of us are proud of the respectful way we treat each other and the serenity to let others be, to come together, but also to be with ourselves, for ourselves. I don't really get angry about anything, but sometimes I would like to sleep a bit longer in the morning.
What do you personally think about humans mentioning you in certain proverbs?
I find it funny, and it doesn't bother me in which context or with what intention it's said. If it brings our species closer together, then I think all comparisons are fair.
Is there anything else you would like to convey to us humans?
There is often, although not always, a deeper perspective behind things. Considering this can open entirely new doors.
I often get the question, what is it like? Can you tell when someone is engaged in telepathy? And I can refer to a normal verbal conversation or even a normal inner dialogue. If I were sitting here now and having some thoughts, you wouldn't notice anything unusual about me. And it's similar with animals. That means when an animal engages in telepathic conversation, it behaves as usual. People also wonder if I need to know the animal, if I need a photo, if the animal needs to be brought to me, meaning it needs to be physically close. And to that I can always say that none of that is necessary. It is even better to know as little as possible or to know nothing about the animal beforehand, and also preferably not to have a photo, because my own mind, my thoughts are always active. They chatter away, and it is much nicer to go into such a conversation without preconceptions and let the animal tell me everything from its perspective, and it's nice to pick that up instead of being influenced by a photo. To connect with the chosen animal, I use my intention, meaning I set the intention to speak with a specific animal. And I've had customers from overseas before where I have no photo, no name of the animal. I only know that someone named Ashton booked me and that it's about communicating with her dog. And usually it's enough if I, for example, mentally greet the dog briefly and say, "Hello, dear dog of Ashton," and then I start asking questions. And it can work similarly with wild animals, meaning I don't have to be nearby, but can think of a specific animal or even a whole population and start the conversation. Does your species have a special purpose here on Earth?
To experience freedom and the forces of nature, to
Do you personally have an individual purpose for this life?
To experience and promote closer living with the people here in the region, and to be a part of this diverse community, both in the air and in the water and on land.
What would you say about how we humans can find our life's purpose?
Everyone has an individual life's purpose, and acknowledging and appreciating that is probably the essential step. In the end, it's always about life experience, and even experiences that humans may not have chosen for themselves can be valuable in terms of learning.
How do you generally perceive your life?
Fulfilling and usually very easy, like the wind guiding you. I love experiencing this feeling of freedom while also having my crew as my constant.
How do you like to spend your day?
I love sailing a lot. It's hard to beat, both by myself and with my crew. And there's always something new to experience in the region. I enjoy watching people go about their day and how they're feeling. I'm not shy about showing myself and cheering people up or getting them out of their thought loops. Food is, of course, also on the agenda, but there's always something new to discover here too.
Has it become more difficult for your species to find food?
I don't find it difficult, but I would also consider myself quite adaptable. There's usually something to find, if not in the water, then on land.
What do you personally think about humans fishing on such a large scale?
I think nature is fundamentally there for everyone, and it's up to humans to fish as they wish. In the animal world, as in nature, everything is utilised, and only as much is used as is really needed at the moment. Therefore, I consider respectful handling to be crucial.
How does flying actually feel?
Great. It feels like real letting go. I feel one with nature when I hoist the sails and let the wind carry and guide me.
Do you personally feel free?
No one is truly unfree when you consider life in a larger context. Each of us has chosen to enter our own life, and humans also plan a lot of their lives. So, personally, I strongly associate freedom with being able to pursue what one has set out for their life, whatever that may be.
Do you think about the past and also the future?
Mostly not. Of course, I have to remember things occasionally, like when it comes to food, for example. But living in nature mainly means being in the here and now, being part of what's happening. Occasionally, just letting yourself be guided is also part of living in the moment.
Do you ever reflect on your own past actions, or are there perhaps even things you regret?
I reflect differently than humans do. Mostly, I reflect at the moment of a particular event or immediately afterward, rather than later. I usually only deal with past things if there's a specific reason for it in the here and now. And instead of regretting, I accept the experience as it is.
Do you have any advice on how we humans can live more in the moment?
I do notice with humans how much they mentally move in the past or future. Acknowledging these circumstances and considering what one actually wants to focus on would be a good basis, I think.
How do you perceive us humans?
Often very thoughtful is the first thing that comes to mind. Probably because it contrasts so much with the drifting that I enjoy so much.
When it comes to the conversation partners in animal communication, that is, the animals, it can simply be compared to verbal conversations. That means my conversation partners are sometimes more talkative, sometimes less so. Rarely does it have to do with them not wanting to, because most of them are happy to engage with me. How much they enjoy it depends on the individual and how the individual is as a being, but also on the situation, how urgent this conversation might be or not. And in terms of the being, I perceive conversation partners who make their statements clearly and distinctly, and then there are others who are more sparing with words or talk non-stop. Really, everything is possible. You can imagine telepathy just like a verbal conversation.
Am Anfang natürlich denkt man, ja, schauen wir mal, ob überhaupt irgendwie was zutrifft oder ob das so allgemein gehalten wird. Aber ich muss sagen, es waren Details dabei, die hätte Christina gar nicht wissen können. Und das hat mich zum einen das war immer so, ich musste schmunzeln, dann ist wieder ein Tränchen gekullert, weil ich so fasziniert war über dieses Kaninchen, was einfach doch so schlau und so kommunikativ auch ist. Und jetzt ist es so, ich weiß, dass sie mich genau versteht und ich weiß ganz genau, dass sie auch mit mir kommuniziert. Und ich glaube einfach, dass die Tiere wirklich mit uns kommunizieren, nur wir vielleicht einfach noch nicht so drauf hören. Ich habe das dann auch so ein bisschen in meinem Freundeskreis und in der Familie erzählt und da merkt man schon, die denken, was will jetzt die? Und Tierkommunikation und Kaninchen, ich glaube, da denkt jeder, ja, genau. Aber ich merke das ja auch und spüre das, dass mein Kaninchen genauso Gefühle hat und genauso mir Dinge mitteilt.
Many people primarily think of mammals when it comes to animal communication, or it's easier for them to imagine it in those cases, but it actually works just as well with insects like ants or perhaps with snails and other small animal species, because telepathy knows no bounds and is actually possible from consciousness to consciousness, regardless of the species. What is your personal life purpose?
For me personally, this life is closely linked to living serenity, patience, and trust. I follow what nature unfolds for me, not only in terms of what occurs, such as food and weather conditions, but also when it happens. However, I do not feel helpless at all. I have chosen this life and feel great confidence in it, standing in close connection with what surrounds me. This trust and the waiting attitude every day make me feel that I am part of something greater.
Why do so many people fear your species?
I perceive that my species, as well as many types of insects, is heavily laden with symbolic meaning in human society. Often my species is portrayed in a context steeped in fear or associated with characters meant to radiate something evil. Sometimes simply the appearance of our species is connected with something unpleasant or threatening, even to physical death. Most of this I perceive as socially and culturally shaped by humans themselves into this image about us. Ultimately, this prevents people from getting to know us or other life forms better and encountering us without prejudice. Instead, most people harbor a strong aversion or fear towards us.
How could we humans overcome fear?
I perceive that aversion or fear is not only fueled by the human-made image of us, but also that estrangement or lack of closeness to our species and often to nature in general contributes another essential part to fear. I think that this estrangement ultimately poses the greatest obstacle for people to overcome prejudices or the negative image about us. A sincere openness to engage with us and get to know us personally
Why do so many people have so little hesitation to kill your species?
I also see the estrangement of people from us as an essential factor here. Humans do not feel as connected to us or other species, although all life and all consciousness are always interconnected.
Do you personally fear death?
Because none of us are truly ever dead. We merely change our physical form.
Would you like to live in harmony with humans?
I, and our species in general, have a very positive attitude towards humans, and we would very much like to support people in overcoming their self-created fears and permanently freeing themselves from them. Not only towards us, but also to live without fear in general. Similarly, I would like to share my confidence and trust with all people who are receptive to it and who wish to re-evaluate their attitude towards life.
Are you personally interested in other species?
Of course, every species has its peculiarities and associated specific life experiences from which I can also learn and benefit. We can all learn so much from each other.
Is there any malicious intent in the animal world?
Even if something is declared as evil in human perception, there is actually no malicious intent behind it, and that's the point. It's about our intentions and how we treat each other. Nothing in the animal world happens to intentionally harm or inflict suffering on someone. Of course, there is something like the food chain as labelled by humans, but even this is never associated with malicious intentions, but purely serves a physical purpose, where we mutually serve each other on a physical level.
Is the form of consciousness tied to the size of a body?
Not at all. I would rather say that our consciousness is often much larger than any physical form we can ever assume, and it cannot be measured or quantified with the human measure of size.
So if you're trying to prove IIC, it would be like trying to prove one type of knowledge in the context of another knowledge system. Simply said, in a knowledge system that is relational, like many indigenous knowledge systems, all is entangled, and intuition is self-evident. It could be subjectively explored, but its objective measurement would be impossible because objectivity cannot exist if observing is not independent but relational. In a Western scientific context, if you're trying to set up an experiment following the rules of mind-body separation and an independent observer, but at the same time are measuring something that defies those rules, it becomes problematic. Because how about you as a researcher observing and thinking and through your setup interfering with the experiment's outcomes, as the whole phenomenon does not exist outside you, but you are part of the constellation?
In everyday life, I do encounter a lot of skepticism when people find out that I practice animal communication, and personally, I think that's completely natural. I was skeptical too, and still am in certain areas, so I also like to engage with scientific findings. But when I meet people that are skeptical, then I think that's justified. So I try not to convince or convert anyone, because I have also noticed in myself that for over 30 years I hadn't engaged with the topic of consciousness, death, telepathy or the like, because for me there was a clear trigger. And I actually often experience that there is a specific moment, a specific reason why people begin to explore such topics. It doesn't always have to be death. But in the end, I do think that everything has its justification and there is a right time to engage with certain topics.
Nachdem ich dann letzte Woche Freitag meinen Kater habe gehen lassen, mir war das so ein starkes Bedürfnis, das einfach mal auszuprobieren. Ich bin dann auch an die richtige Person gekommen und ja, dann hat sie erstmal die 3 Katzen auch beschrieben und das war der erste Moment, wo ich dachte so, das konnte die doch gar nicht alles wissen, ja? Bei allen 3 Katzen, das, was die da alles dann erzählt hat schon über den Charakter von den Katzen, ja, da habe ich nur noch gestanden so, ja, das sind sie, das sind sie.
Speaking of skeptical people, they are an important reason why my work means so much to me. Because being able to address those people who may be skeptical but still want to open themselves up to this possibility, for me, that is always pure fulfillment. To see how this opening pays off and how people consider this possibility, try animal communication, and that makes it tangible and experiential for them, how telepathy works and that it actually works. And the second reason, of course, are the animals themselves, who have my whole heart. Because they usually serve us and enter our lives to be there for us, and then being able to serve them is perhaps the greatest gift and the greatest thank you I can give to them. How do you perceive your life in the zoo?
So far, very well. I feel well taken care of and admired. Sometimes I feel the desire to be able to swim long distances, but otherwise I'm personally satisfied.
What do you think about animals in captivity?
It's a difficult question because you can't generalize the situation for everyone. At least regarding this zoo, most of us like it here. People often think we've been brought here against our will, and for some of us it may feel that way, but most of us have chosen this. In circuses, I perceive it as more stressful for some animals than it is for us here. But even there, many animals feel it's their time to shine, and the majority appreciate having a task or even a job.
Do you enjoy performing tricks in front of an audience?
I enjoy it very much. I see so many shining eyes. I feel the euphoria flowing through my own body, and I feel how much appreciation and love for us animals living together flows from many visitors, especially from children. I always appreciate seeing so many children among the audience.
Would you still perform tricks if no one was watching and you didn't get a reward for it?
Probably not to the same extent. I would still occasionally like to engage in various activities with our trainer because it's just fun to interact with him and we have a close connection. But having an audience and impressing them is very important to me. As for the reward, that's a given, isn't it?
What do you think about the relationship between humans and you?
I enjoy being surrounded by people who admire me, and I think that zoo animals, like our human counterparts, significantly raise awareness for the animal world. It's important to me to promote enthusiasm, empathy, and recognition for our species, as well as for animals in general, and to strengthen the bond between humans and animals.
Would you say that humans in zoos, circuses, or other animal parks are demanding towards the animals?
I don't think demanding is quite the right word. What I perceive more is that humans often underestimate or have difficulty empathizing with us. As a result, they sometimes approach us here with wrong or inappropriate expectations. Personally, I rarely feel the behavior of humans as demanding, but I know I tend to handle it calmly.
What do you think about the idea that humans believe they can own animals? Do you feel like property?
I wouldn't say I see it that way with all humans, but yes, there are still some who have this notion of ownership. I think these people often don't know better, at least not in that moment in life. The higher self of these people, as you call it, usually gives more insight into what the individual is going through at the moment. I think it would do us all good to point fingers at each other's lists, metaphorically speaking, of course. I know I don't have fingers.
What do you think is necessary for humans to be in harmony with themselves and nature again?
I think to be in harmony with something, you need to have a corresponding closeness to it. That means actually being in nature, regularly being in it if you want to be more in harmony with it. Similarly, being more with and closer to animals, but above all, just being and letting them be, and simply being with oneself without distraction, just being inwardly focused with one's own thoughts.
Is there humour in the animal world, or is that more of a human characteristic?
Of course. Animals can tease each other very well. Just ask the monkeys. And especially animals that live closely with humans don't miss the chance to tease their people. But it's still something very individual. His character is not just a human thing.
How could we humans find more joy and happiness in life again?
Promoting curiosity and openness to other forms of consciousness to realize that we are all connected to everything. No one is truly ever alone or separated. Realizing this connectedness can move a lot of essential things for people.
The beauty of animal communication is that theoretically, anyone can do it, because it is nothing but telepathy, and that is a primal, meaning natural form of communication for all of us. Thus, theoretically, anyone could use it. And how well we can use telepathy often depends on how much we get in our own way. At least I like to call it that. And when it comes to getting in our own way, it's mainly our own mind that keeps chattering away, criticizing us and making us insecure. And if we can overcome this point despite the uncertainties and open ourselves to the thoughts coming from outside, then telepathy works very, very well and is available to all of us. Nevertheless, I observe certain differences here and there among customers who are learning it, and I sometimes compare it to learning to play an instrument, because anyone can learn to play the guitar, for example. Not everyone might become a world-famous and highly talented guitarist. Another exciting thing about animal communication is that this process, telepathy, actually happens for each of us every day. Whether we notice it consciously, whether we want it to be true, whether we like it, it actually always happens. And we can observe this very well in moments when we suddenly think of something we hadn't thought of before, completely out of context. Then the likelihood is relatively high that it's a message, information, or assistance from another consciousness surrounding us. That means telepathy unconsciously happens for each of us, and if we want to perceive it somewhat more consciously, then we can put some effort into it and simply work on real cases, getting feedback on what we perceive. If we reflect on it and maybe even have an experienced person with us who supports us and gives us tips about it, then we can become more aware of telepathy and even get better at it. Speaking with physically deceased animals doesn't feel any different at all, because physical existence has absolutely no impact on the process of telepathic communication. What I often notice, however, is that the animals themselves enter the dialogue with a different attitude when they are not in physical form. I often experience them as somehow lighter, perhaps a little more alive. They are also usually in a very good mood, which doesn't mean that they can't embody all of this in their physical existence, but I simply perceive an above-average presence of these qualities when they are no longer physically there. And what I find particularly exciting personally is speaking with deceased animals of which I somehow hear about in the news, perhaps when a whale has stranded or another animal has died. Then I am very eager to learn more about it, and then I like to engage in a conversation for myself. Why do whales beach themselves so regularly?
There is no general answer to this question, but many of us strand due to disruptions in our orientation caused by external factors. A few of us actually strand to signal a message. In my case, both of the mentioned reasons apply. I was well aware of what I was getting into and consciously chose a prominent location for my endeavour. Some of us have only recently become disoriented, and I needed to make a statement here, hoping to raise awareness and fuel discussion about the underlying issues.
Can humans do anything to prevent whales from beaching?
Yes, by raising more awareness about what happens to whales repeatedly and increasing the urgency for a discussion about the underlying issues. Because most people are not aware of how they interfere with our orientation through sound waves.
How old did you get, and what does age mean to you personally?
From a human perspective, I was middle-aged, but for me personally, physical age has less significance compared to humans. Every stage of physical life has its peculiarities, but fundamentally, physical age does not define the value of life experience. It is the life experiences themselves that matter, and depending on what is personally relevant to us, a specific life experience can mean everything.
Are there differences in intelligence between different species, or is that just a human fallacy?
Intelligence is a very human measure that only considers a specific manifestation linked to the body and cannot encompass what our mind or consciousness is actually capable of. I consider a mind as the true source, and every consciousness is part of a larger consciousness that is neither more nor less intelligent, but is linked to different types of experience.
Does every animal have emotions?
Of course, every animal has emotions. We are all consciousness, regardless of our species. Emotions shape our life experiences significantly, allowing us to fully experience them.
Why do some whale populations continue to decline?
On the one hand, it's the conditions that determine the basis for our physical existence, and on the other hand, an individual consciousness's own choice plays a role in deciding which life experiences and associated physical form to opt for.
Are there species that come anew to Earth?
Yes, there are, and there will continue to be, as they represent parts of the physical manifestation or development. Many species will also come closer together, but all of this will not diminish the value of life experiences.
What is it like to be a whale and live in the water?
It is reassuring, peaceful, and allows one to take things as they come. At the same time, one is surrounded by enchanting diversity and boundlessness.
Can you feel the pollution of the seas yourself?
Yes, I am very aware of how the water is changing. It is noticeable that less consideration is being given to the element of water at the moment.
Is there anything humans could do to improve the situation in the seas?
Recognize the true value of water. Among other things, what life and what incomparable life experiences it enables. For this, recognition, attention, and engagement are needed.
What is your personal mission on Earth?
Peace and peaceful coexistence. Our entire species stands for peace, even though this is rarely associated with us. We may be physically large, but we respect all life around us and are peaceful in our social environment. No matter how physically small in comparison to us it may be, and we want to continue to embody and symbolize this.
Personally, I have the vision, albeit a very ambitious one, that telepathy will become even more natural for all of us. Because if one day we all knew that we are connected to everything and everyone, and that we are all part of a greater consciousness, then I believe that we would all be somewhat more considerate, understanding, and perhaps even more loving towards each other. And that is actually a very beautiful vision of the world that I like to hold on to, even though I know it is very ambitious.
In the scientific world, we are in the middle of an ontological and a species turn, which can be most strongly felt in the social sciences, but actually aim to affect science as a whole. Now, in the ontological turn, it has been proposed that there were and are many other ways of understanding and experiencing reality. So these are very varied, but many do not consider humans as the only conscious and thinking beings in the world, linking back to the species turn here. But they consider animals, and some even see trees, stones, mountains, forests, the water, the earth, all sorts of other beings as having agency. Furthermore, they do not define the world from this opposition between nature and culture, mind and body, the objective and the subjective, facts and values. Instead, they are often seeing this as a relational world, in which all that exists is conscious and affects each other, not only materially, but also through thought. Because consciousness, thinking, and being cannot be separated from each other. So there is an awareness of how we are entangled with all human and non-human others, and a culture of caring, in which those others are also part of me, and what I think in my heart literally matters.
The wind reveals her wounds, but her heart is free out here. Her feet on bare ground, but that she will not fear. The earth that sends her blessings through the beauty of the land. Her life is slowly progressing, but strong she will stand.
What if animals are not so different from us? What if they do have feelings, thoughts, unique personalities, and souls? What if they are aware of themselves and we just lost our ability to understand them? It's not my goal to make people believe in things they don't want to believe in. But I hope that at least a tiny spark of the animal's wisdom and love may find its way to your heart and stays there for a little while. Maybe the next time you'll see an aerial silk artist, you'll remember the elegance and the encouraging words of the spider, or think of the joyful heart of the sea lion when the clown brings a smile to your face. May you hear the whispers within, and may it guide you back to being one.
Once upon a time, we were all united. We had all our hearts at the same place. Once upon a time, we were all connected. We had all our minds at the same place. Once upon a time, we were all aligned. We upon a time we were we walk together, we stand together. When the lines all meet in the heart of love's creek, there will be peace.